Can you hear me?
Yeah, and we're now recording and we're about to be live on Facebook. As soon as we're live, we'll start. This is our first time doing this, so we're also learning as we go.
In Poland, we say I'm the rabbit. I don't know what you say in the UK. In America, we say the guinea pig. So proud to be here.
Hi, Helise.
Hello, Gideon.
How are you?
I'm good. I just want to say hello, but I can hear you. What?
Angela. I just wanted to say hello.
Thank you. Hello to all of our teammates.
Okay, so okay, we are live on Facebook. I'm ready to go, everyone. So firstly, thank you everyone for joining us today. This is March of the Living UK's first online Zoom event, so we're really excited and we're really happy that all of you have joined us. We can see so many familiar faces and people that were meant to be going on the trip and have been on the trip from all different years, and some people that are friends of people that have been on the trip. So we are really excited that you're all with us today. As many of you know, that we were actually meant to be in Poland as we speak. Unfortunately, we obviously had to postpone, but we really don't want to let this period of time go by without honouring and remembering and learning. And for us, we're now going digital. So this week we are going to bring you various different sessions, ceremonies, panel discussions, all different things, so that you can engage in what we're about, how we do our education. If you've been on the trip, hopefully it will expand your knowledge, remind you. If you haven't been on the trip, hopefully it will be a bit of a taster and you will consider joining us on our next programme. And I'm not going to kind of chat on anymore. I'm going to introduce you to Helise. Helise is our major partner in Poland with our educational content. She's the director at the Talby Centre for the Renewal of Jewish Life in Poland Foundation. And we work very closely with Helise and her team on the ground in Poland in developing some of the educational programme that we run whilst we're in Poland. And we're really honoured today that we've got Helise joining us. And it's a very significant day today because it's actually the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. And Helise, who lives in Warsaw and is in Warsaw at the moment, is going to tell us a little bit about that day, but also introduce us to a very significant film, Who Will Write Our History. And this film will be available for 2 weeks. I will share the link on the chat for everyone to see. Feel free to pass it on to your friends and to family. And once Helise has spoken a bit about this film and also her kind of role and experience with this film, hopefully you'll all go and watch it. So I'm going to hand over to Helise.
Well, Cassie, thank you. Scott, thank you. It's really lovely to see some familiar names, some faces. It was a day that many of us were to be together. It's also an interesting day for all of us who would have gathered at the Ghetto Memorial, for those of you who know Warsaw or who've read about the uprising, know that on what was once the rubble of the Warsaw Ghetto, which was also the heart of pre-war Jewish Warsaw, stands a very large monument. And the monument actually has two sides. We often stand in the front. There, it's a picture of fighters and people, both men and women, who are gallantly fighting against the Nazi oppression regime and terror. And on the other side, and I wouldn't want to say the backside, but on the other side, there's a depiction of those Jews who were not able to take up arms or chose to resist in other ways. And so I've been thinking a lot about today where we stand, how we need often memorials to help us tell a story, or certainly a place for us to go to share emotion, to share memory, to pay tribute. And I thought, well, what to do today? Today would have been a day that many of us here in Warsaw would have received a yellow daffodil. The yellow daffodil was started by the Polin Museum of the History of Polish Jews about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whereby volunteers would go out in the Warsaw community and give anyone who wanted a yellow daffodil. And this is a way of keeping the memory of the Warsaw Ghetto alive among those who might have survived or have heard about it, but then certainly reaching the younger generation for whom it's really, for them, past history. And so today we are all gathered here with my yellow daffodils, our yellow daffodils. And I thought I would share some impressions with you. Full disclosure, I'm an educator, but I'm not a historian, and I want to pay tribute to all of those who I see here, to Scott and to Cassie and to Angela, and I saw Robin on, and to Gideon, and I can't see everyone at once because it's too distracting, but to thank you for all that you've taught me. And I want to dedicate some of my comments, if I can, to Maureen Kendler, whose curiosity and the way she would look at the world really inspired me to find out, so who is Emanuel Ringelblum and what does it mean for us? And in the short time that I have with you, I'm moving the flowers because those of you know me, I speak with my hands. I generally feel better when I'm standing up, and I thought of doing that, but then I'd have to readjust the screen. And so I want to come across as both humble and as authentic as I can. When we mark April 19th, the ghetto uprising started a little bit, there were hints of it in January of 1943. We remember now that Poland is occupied in 1939 in the beginning of September. And by November of 1940, by no means is Warsaw the first ghetto, but the ghetto in Warsaw, the largest, is basically sealed. And all of Jewish life that was taking place throughout Warsaw is suddenly pushed and forced into a small space, which basically creates a humanly populated hole in the heart of the city. And all of the organizations and all of the movements that were alive outside the city and vibrant are suddenly finding themselves in with this constrained space. So you have people who are anti-Zionists with the Zionists, and they can no longer have the space or the freedom to argue far away because they're forced to live under horrifying conditions. And you have the Bundists, who is staunch socialists like Marek Edelman, who becomes an ally of Mordechai Anilevich, who is strongly Zionist from the youth movement. And we realize in this horrifying space how people whose lives may not have converged, but they shared the fact that they were Jewish, have to come together. Now, it's not always a story of shall we say, cooperation among Jews. There's a history of challenges in that department of our lives. I think now I hope we are managing to come together in the face of what we are all challenged by. And I hope that this evening's Zoom comes to your living rooms and your homes in safe space, and that you and your families are all well and continue to be so. But when I've been thinking about what I normally would have been doing today, I would have been standing in front of the monument. And I would have been thinking, I hope, of other people whose names we don't know, women, men, rabbis, socialists, Bundists, teachers, artists, who each contributed to maintaining humanity in a place that humanity was almost unbelievably unbearable. One could not touch it. And so I wanted to talk a little bit today about not only Mordechai Anilevich and not only Mark Edelman, and I don't want to say not only, but also people like Tzvia Lubetkin, people like Tosha Altman, Antek Zuckerman, Vlad Kamid, people who were taking each and every role that needed to be played so that on April 19th, when the Germans enter, they're forced to retreat. The ghetto uprising does not come in a vacuum. And this, I think, is important. And I would like to suggest that when we are wearing our yellow daffodils, or when we are paying tribute, when we're lighting our candles or laying wreaths, saying Kaddish or Kel Mel HaRachamim, we're thinking of all those people in the ghetto, but all throughout the Holocaust, who got up every day and tried to live through one day, to take care of aging parents, to take care of their children, to take care of their neighbors, to make sure they had enough to share, whether it was food or a blanket. And that we have to look at as a way of, I can resist. I stand up every day. And then we have people who are the educators and the people who decided to maintain underground press, and people who served as doctors and nurses on the front lines of, horrifying conditions then, of course, of disease and starvation, malnutrition, dehydration. And then you have other people who tried to keep factories going so that they could place other Jews in an opportunity at work, to have a reason to be. And then we have a gentleman named Emanuel Ringelblum. He was a historian, he was a sociologist. He had worked for the American Jewish Distribution Committee prior to the war. And he decided that very early on during the war, as early as 39, maybe the beginning of 40, that Jews should tell the story. Jews would be responsible for telling the story, of sharing the details of what had happened to us as a people during the time of the war. The idea was that this group of people, and I'll talk about them in a second, were going to be the transmitters of our history in real time, what's happening today, to me, to us now. And his dream was to take all of the collections of the documents and all of the archives and all of the testimonies and the wills that were written and put them together and present the world with the truth. Many of us have seen the propaganda films that were put out by the Germans, but we see it from their eyes and through Ringelblum's work and his collection of documents and photographs and of paintings and of cartoons and of young children's notebooks. We are allowed to see the truth of Jewish life and death, not only in the Warsaw Ghetto, but in other areas of Poland. Now, what makes this so special? He decides that through his work with self-care, which was housed in the Jewish Historical Institute, which I hope, if you've been, I hope I've greeted you there, and if you haven't been yet, next year, I will, God willing, have that opportunity. He decides to find 60 people who will engage with him in the most elaborate research project, if you will, of the time. And he assigns each one of them, according to their abilities or their interests, of an area for which they must focus to gather posters, to gather press clippings, to gather information, statistics. There's someone who was in charge of the ghetto post office. To gather this information, to write it down meticulously, to write their own diaries and their own testimonies, and that he began with his Confederates, collaborators, which we use in the best sense of the word, to pull these documents together because they would be needed to tell the story after the war. And so he has people like Gela Steckstein, who's an artist, and she would teach young children painting. And he has people like Rachela Auerbach, who was a Yiddishist, who wrote before the war and continued to write. And she even leaves Warsaw and he calls her back. And she comes back. He said, I need you to run the soup kitchens, and I need you to help me get all of us gather information about how we are trying to help our people. He has people working for him who probably would never have shared a conversation before. It's mind-boggling. But you have people who are religious, people who are not religious, Bundists, you have people who are Zionists, who are suddenly given, they're tasked with a reason to live, but a reason to give. It becomes clear after the great deportations of July 1942 that the likelihood of Ringelblum or any members of what we call Oneg Shabbos, this clandestine network which often meet on Shabbat, on Shabbos, sometimes in what was the Jewish Historical Institute, sometimes elsewhere, it became clear that they may not be the ones to tell us the story. And they decided, very wisely, to bury the documents in metal canisters. Some of you who've seen the movie or been to the Jewish Historical Institute or the Shoah, the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, have seen a milk can. And this was one of those metal containers that the people who had nothing decided would be best to conserve the documents that they risked their lives to collect and to put aside. So these documents are buried, and please forgive me if my dates are mixed up. I think more important at the moment is this thread of humanity that pulls us all together. The first are buried in August 1942. Ringelblum continues to collect. All of the people who survived continue to collect. And they realized by 1943, just before the outbreak, I don't want to say outbreak, but the beginning of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, they bury a second cache of documents. 3 people know where these documents are hidden. And for those of you who've been to Warsaw and those of you who've seen films or you've been to museums, you know what Warsaw looked like before the war. But we also have stark images of what Warsaw looked like after the war. The city itself suffers 5 invasions, 2 uprisings. And by the time the war is over, Warsaw is reduced to rubble. Ringelblum is able to escape the ghetto with his wife and young son, as others are. He's hidden by a Polish family with other Jews, and a traitor betrays them. He's taken to Paviak prison, and they're summarily shot. The ghetto is, I'm not sure the word we want to use, liquefied. I mean, after the ghetto uprising, it endures for more time than anyone imagined. By May 16th, the Germans blow up the Great Synagogue of Warsaw, which was an edifice that held 2,000 to 2,200 congregants, as a symbol that Jewish Warsaw was finished. It had been taken care of. What happens to our history? What happens to the documents? What happens to the photos? What happens to the music? What happens to the art? After the war, 2 people who know where the documents are survive. Actually 3. Ringelblum is gone. He was one. His lieutenant, Hirschwasser, is 2. And Rachela Auerbach, who doesn't know where they are, survive. And they come to Warsaw in 46, and one stash of the documents is uncovered from the rubble. Imagine, no streets, no signs, no buildings, no way of knowing really where you are. And having the luck, maybe it's I think it's Beshert, that the first cache is lifted from the ground. 1950, the second cache. So what I would like to invite you to do is to meet all of these people. Several of them are portrayed in the movie really quite well, who help us understand what the Oneg Shabbos tried to do. And I think they leave us with a challenge. They leave us with a challenge that this is our story. They did this for us. Yes, historians are, it's good for historians and sociologists and people who study all sorts of things, but really it's for us. It's for those of us from all over the world who are committed to our Jewish lives, who are conscious of our heritage, and who want to transmit our history. And basically, everything that was hidden was for us to discover, because it's now our job to transmit it further. The film is a docudrama. I had the honor of sitting on the set with Dr. Samuel Casso, who's the author of the book on which the movie Who Will Write Our History is based. I strongly recommend it. Roberta Grossman was a lovely director who said, Helise, come sit. And actually I was watching the set and then through the camera, and you realize what an art it is to make what you think ought to be for us to see. Just a little bit like Ringelblum did. I'm projecting this so that you will watch it. We're indebted to Nancy Spielberg for co-producing it. And I strongly recommend that you watch it, and hopefully we will come back for a further conversation. I hope that the memory of those who resisted, whether by pen or with a gun or by getting up every day or teaching their child that there's hope and humanity in the world, will be for a blessing. And may we go from strength to strength. Thank you, Cassie.
Thank you, Helise. That was brilliant. I hope you all got an insight into what the film is about and why today it's significant to watch the film. Like Helise said, I would really encourage you all to watch the film. If you haven't received the link via the email, please drop me an email or Facebook and I can distribute the link. The link will be live until Friday the 1st of May. So if you don't have the opportunity to watch it tonight and you would like to watch it at a later date, you can do. And we hope that maybe in a few weeks, once we've given people the chance to watch the film, we'll come back on here and discuss it in further detail, because it really is a significant part of our education, of understanding what happened in the ghetto, understanding Jewish life before the war and during. So thank you, Helise.
Can I just add one thing? Sorry, Cassie. Just to say, for those of you who come via, not necessarily through Cassie and March of Living, which is brilliant, you can also access our website and we'll happily share the link to the film with you. And
Great.
if you haven't come, because the movie is brilliant, the story is compelling, but when you see the actual documents, you're completely connected.
Yeah, I can testify for that. To actually go to the Jewish Historical Institute and to see the milk carton and to see the documents, you know, firsthand, it really is, you know, an experience that is very different from hearing about it and reading about it on the internet. So I would all encourage you, or if you are in Warsaw, to go to the Jewish Historical Institute and see the archives and see the milk carton. If anybody, I can see Robin's actually got the picture of the milk carton behind him. If anyone wants to know what it looks like, if you look for Robin at the top, you will get to see a picture, I think, from one of our last trips to the Jewish Historical Institute. Oh, he's moving out the way so everyone can see. That's great. So thank you all for joining us. It's been really great to see you all, to have everybody in this forum. Like I said, this was kind of our first online event, and we wanted to see if there was an appetite for some more events and sessions. From the turnout, both on Zoom and it's being streamed on Facebook, I think we've had a really great turnout. So we're really happy. We have a few other events coming up if people are interested. Tomorrow evening actually marks Yom HaShoah, and there will be an online ceremony for the whole community. There will be a communal candle lighting. On Tuesday, there is a whole day of education. We've emailed around 4 specific sessions that are being done by March of the Living Educators. I would really encourage you to call into some of them or watch them on Facebook, watch them on the link. And we also have on Wednesday, Angela, who is on the call, is going to be leading a very special session called Voices from Belsen. On Wednesday, we were meant to be holding a very special memorial at Bergen-Belsen, and we can't be there in person, but we really want to honour this special day as much as we can online. So please join us on Wednesday evening. All the details will be emailed, they'll be on our Facebook. And the last thing to tell you about is, for those of you that have been on the trip, you might know on the day of the march, it's a very kind of poignant thing that everybody writes on. It's a wooden placard, writes a message of remembrance or a message of hope, and places it on the train tracks in Birkenau, and it's quite a special sight to see all of them. There's nearly 10,000 on the tracks every year of messages from all around the world. Obviously this year we can't be there to do that, and we have created an online platform. Again, it's all in the email, it's all on our Facebook, but please, tonight, tomorrow and Tuesday over Yom HaShoah, go onto the website, write a plaque, and help us replicate those 10,000 messages that would be in Birkenau on Tuesday. Thank you all for listening and for joining us, and thank you to Helise.
Thank all of you.
I wish you all a lovely Sunday evening. Hopefully after some dinner you'll sit down and watch Who Will Write Our History for Sunday night movie night, and look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Almost, thank you.
Be well.